You think astronauts die peacefully in space. But the truth is, one man fell from the sky knowing exactly how he was going to die. And there was absolutely nothing anyone could do to save him. April 24th, 1967. A man is hurtling toward Earth at thousands of miles per hour. His spacecraft is spinning out of control. The parachute that's supposed to save his life is tangled. And he knows, without a shadow of a doubt, that in just a few minutes, he's going to slam into the ground at full speed. His name was Vladimir Komarov, and what happened to him is something that still haunts NASA and space agencies around the world to this day. This wasn't just a tragedy. This was a disaster that everyone saw coming, and nobody could stop. Before we get into what happened during those final horrifying moments, you need to understand something. This mission was cursed from the very beginning. Vladimir Komarov wasn't supposed to die. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to be on this mission in the first place. But the Soviet Union had other plans, and those plans were driven by something way more dangerous than any spacecraft malfunction. They were driven by pride, politics, and a race against America that the Soviets were desperate to win. See, back in the 1960s, the space race wasn't just about exploration. It was about proving who was better, who was stronger, who was more advanced. The United States and the Soviet Union were locked in this intense competition, and every single launch was a statement. Every success was a victory. Every failure was humiliation on the world stage. And in 1967, the Soviet Union was planning something massive. They wanted to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution with a huge space spectacle. They wanted to launch Soyuz 1, have it meet up with Soyuz 2 in orbit, have cosmonauts perform the first ever spacewalk transfer between two spacecraft, and then bring everyone home as heroes. Sounds amazing, right? Except there was one massive problem. The Soyuz spacecraft wasn't ready. Not even close. Engineers had found over 200 technical problems with the Soyuz spacecraft. 200. These weren't small issues either. We're talking about serious structural problems, faulty equipment, unreliable systems. The kind of problems that could easily kill someone. The engineers knew this. They wrote reports, they sent warnings up the chain of command, they literally begged their superiors to delay the mission. But the people in charge didn't want to hear it. The political pressure was too intense. The anniversary was coming up. They needed this win. So they made a decision that would end up costing a man his life. They decided to launch anyway. Now here's where it gets even more tragic. The original pilot for this mission wasn't supposed to be Vladimir Komarov. It was supposed to be Yuri Gagarin. Yes, that Yuri Gagarin. The first human ever in space. The most famous cosmonaut in the entire Soviet Union. A national hero, a living legend. But Gagarin knew something was wrong. He knew the spacecraft was a death trap. And so did his friend, Vladimir Komarov. Here's the thing that makes this story so incredibly sad. Komarov knew the mission was going to kill him. He actually knew. According to people who were there, Komarov was fully aware that the Soyuz 1 had serious problems. He knew the chances of survival were slim. But he went anyway. Why? Because if he refused, the backup pilot would have to go instead. And the backup pilot was Yuri Gagarin. Komarov couldn't let his friend die. He couldn't let the Soviet Union lose their greatest hero. So he made a choice. He chose to go on what he believed might be a suicide mission to save Gagarin's life. Think about that for a second. Imagine knowing that you're about to climb into a spacecraft that might kill you, and doing it anyway because you don't want your best friend to die instead. That's not just bravery. That's sacrifice on a level most of us can't even imagine. On April the 23rd, 1967, Vladimir Komarov climbed into Soyuz 1. The launch went fine. The rocket performed exactly as it should. For a brief moment, everything seemed okay. Maybe the engineers were wrong. Maybe the warnings were too cautious. Maybe this would actually work. But then, Komarov reached orbit and everything started falling apart. The first problem showed up almost immediately. One of the solar panels failed to deploy. This was a huge issue because the solar panels were supposed to provide power to the spacecraft. Without both panels working, Komarov didn't have enough electricity to power all his systems properly. He couldn't orient the spacecraft correctly. He couldn't charge the batteries fully. The mission was already in serious trouble, and he'd only been in space for a few hours. Ground control started scrambling. They immediately canceled the launch of Soyuz 2. There was no point sending more cosmonauts up if Soyuz 1 was already crippled. Now the focus shifted to just one thing: getting Komarov home alive. But that was going to be way harder than anyone thought. As Komarov orbited the Earth, more problems kept appearing. The spacecraft's orientation system wasn't working right. He was having trouble controlling his position in space. Communication was spotty. Systems were overheating. The spacecraft that everyone knew was dangerous was proving to be even worse than expected. Komarov worked desperately to fix what he could, but he was fighting a losing battle. The Soyuz 1 was breaking down around him, and there was only so much one man could do. After 17 hours in orbit, ground control made the decision. They needed to bring him down now. They couldn't risk waiting any longer. The spacecraft was barely functioning, and if they waited for conditions to get worse, they might lose him completely. So they began the process of bringing Komarov home. But nobody knew if the re-entry systems would even work. Nobody knew if the heat shield would hold. Nobody knew if the parachutes would deploy. All they could do was hope and pray that somehow, against all odds, Komarov would make it. Want to know how it all ended? Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss part 2. It's going to blow your mind.